And for more on the evolving Russia-Ukraine peace talks, we're bringing in Kervin, former lead ISR coordinator for the U.S. Army, as well as host of the This Week Explained. Good to see you, Kervin. Thanks for joining. Breakthroughs toward peace talks seem to be accelerating. What's the latest?
First of all, as always, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to do these things, and happy President's Day to everybody that's watching. I will say that the latest developments are just more of what has been leaked from what a possible peace deal from General Kellogg might look like, and these the negotiations that have been leaked out, or not really leaked out, but President Donald Trump has said he's talked to Vladimir Putin, and then they will meet in Saudi Arabia. So, what does that look like right now? Reading what we've seen that's been posted online, it looks like they're going to push for the recently annexed regions of Ukraine to be held by Russia, all Ukrainian troops out of the Kursk region, and then a buffer zone put in between the newly formed border of Ukraine and Russia. Those are, I think, the big sticking points for a lot of people. But we have to remember these negotiations start with the two extremes and what both sides say that they need to have and that they want to have. And then we'll come to, over the next 100 days, something that looks hopefully more even for both parties.
Now, you had mentioned the bilateral talks that are happening in Saudi Arabia, Europe and Ukraine not participating. How do you interpret that?
Well, I mean, it is quite interesting, but let's be honest here. During the Biden administration, there was no discussions between the U.S. and Russia. I think what we're seeing here is an attempt to get Russia involved in the negotiations because both sides have to come to the table on this in good faith. Within that same breath, Europe and Ukraine are going to have their own bilateral meetings. It looks like Zelensky's going to the United Arab Emirates, using them as a mediator. They've successfully mediated with Hamas and Israel. So we're going to see both sides talk about this separately, and hopefully in the next 100 days come to the negotiating table and come to an agreement to stop this war.
Now, there were many high-level Trump representatives meeting with President Zelensky last week. What came of those talks?
Well, that's just an opportunity for both sides to tell the other what they're looking for. Zelensky had a chance to speak directly to individuals within the Trump administration to explain his fears, most notably that a Minsk II style deal is going to happen again that does not offer any protections for Ukraine, and that then emboldens Putin to do what, honestly, we have all said from the very beginning that he wanted to do, which is take control of Ukraine completely, and that starts by making another move to Kyiv in the future.
Now, Kervin, Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Hegseth leveled some criticism toward European leadership last week. Can you break that down for us? And also, is this a departure from traditional U.S. support for the European allies?
Yeah, they made some bold claims about Europe, and quite honestly, I think they were factual. Europe has relied too much on the United States. I believe last I saw from 2023, NATO spending, the U.S. was at 71% of funds spent in NATO, and the next closest was the UK, I think, at about 5%. That cannot continue. The U.S. cannot continue to put NATO on its back and keep defending it. So while those statements were bold, I also think they were factual. I don't think that they change the alliances between the U.S. and NATO, but it does put a target onto NATO countries that they need to do more. This is a war on the continent of Europe. They believe that Russia is an existential threat to European nations. They need to spend more to deter that threat.
And Kervin, staying with that point and elaborating a bit more as we finish up, French President Macron has now called for a meeting of European leadership in France this week. What's been the response from the EU and NATO leadership to this American-led push and the criticisms, as we discussed, that were leveled at them last week by Vance and Hegseth?
Yeah, I think they're very worried about it. If you follow any stoicism or any words from the philosophers of the past, they will say that those reactions are more telling to the person making the reaction than they are to what they're reacting to. And I think that's what we're seeing with Europe. I think they're seeing what the United States is doing, and they're saying that we have not done enough as Europeans in the European Union and NATO to deter Russia from doing this. Go back to what I said in the Minsk II agreement. There were not enough pressures put on Putin to prevent further escalation. Their emotional reactions at the very beginning are a response to that, but I think now they're having the chance to reflect on it, to sit down, to have conversations, and honestly do more. Put in more spending, more defense spending, protect their own borders.
We appreciate your analysis this morning. Kervin, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.